The UNS Liberty drifted through the dark space between stars. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge watching the endless black void outside. His ship was humanity's first deep space exploration vessel. They had been traveling for 6 months now, far beyond anything humans had ever seen before. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange on the sensors," said Communications Officer Danny Brooks. He looked confused as he stared at his screen. "It's big and it's moving toward us." Jake walked over to Danny's station. The screen showed a massive object approaching their position. It was unlike anything in their databases. The shape was smooth and curved, almost like a seashell, but the size of a city. Strange lights pulsed along its surface in patterns that hurt to look at. "How big is it?" Jake asked. "At least 50 times larger than our ship," Danny replied. His voice shook a little. "Captain, I think we found aliens." On the alien vessel, Commander Zethka of the Valoran Empire studied the primitive craft ahead of them. The small metal ship looked crude and basic. Its energy signature was weak and its design seemed ancient by galactic standards. This would be another easy addition to the Galactic Council's territory. "Prepare the pacification beam," Zethka ordered his crew. "This species appears to be in the early stages of space travel. They will submit quickly once they see our technology." The Valoran ship moved closer to the human vessel. Bright beams of energy shot out and wrapped around the Liberty like invisible ropes. Jake felt his ship stop moving as the alien tractor beam took control. "They've got us," said pilot Tony Clark from his station. "Engines aren't responding. Whatever they're using is holding us tight." Jake pressed the ship-wide communication button. "All crew, this is the captain. We are being approached by an unknown alien vessel. All security teams report to stations." "This is not a drill." Security Chief Lisa Parker was already moving through the corridors with her team. She had 20 trained soldiers under her command. They were all experienced fighters, but none of them had ever faced aliens before. Lisa checked her rifle and made sure her team was ready. The Valoran boarding shuttles attached to the Liberty's hull. Cutting beams began slicing through the metal doors. The aliens expected to find frightened primitives who would surrender immediately. Instead, they found Lisa and her team waiting with weapons raised. "Unknown beings, you are trespassing on a human vessel," Lisa called out as the first aliens stepped through the smoking doorway. "Leave now or we will defend ourselves." The Valorans looked like tall, thin humans, but with blue-gray skin and large black eyes. They wore shimmering armor that seemed to bend light around it. Their weapons looked like crystal rods that glowed with inner fire. The lead Valoran spoke in a strange musical language. When the humans didn't respond, he pointed his weapon at Lisa. A beam of blue energy shot out, but Lisa had already rolled behind cover. The beam hit the wall and left a smoking hole in the metal. "Open fire," Lisa shouted. The human bullet struck the alien armor and bounced off harmlessly. The Valorans looked surprised but not worried. They had expected this. Their armor could stop any primitive projectile weapon, but Lisa was already thinking. She had noticed that the aliens moved slowly and seemed confused by the ship's layout. They were used to different kinds of battles. She spoke into her radio. "All teams use hit-and-run tactics. Don't stay in one place. Use the corridors and maintenance shafts." The human soldiers scattered through the ship. They knew every passage and hiding spot. The aliens followed, but they moved in neat formations like they were marching in a parade. Lisa's team began picking them off one by one. In engineering, Chief Engineer Rick Hayes was working fast. He had heard the shooting and knew they needed an advantage. Rick looked at the ship's power systems and had an idea. He began rerouting electricity from the life support systems to the hull plating. When the next group of aliens tried to cut through a door, they got a nasty shock. The electrified hull sent them flying backward. Their armor protected them from the worst of it, but they were stunned and confused. Medical Officer Karen Wells was treating wounded crew members in the medical bay. She watched the security cameras and saw something that surprised her. The aliens weren't trying to kill everyone. They were using stun weapons and trying to capture humans alive. This wasn't a war to them. It was something else. The fighting continued for hours. The aliens had better weapons and armor, but the humans knew their ship and fought with desperate courage. Every corridor became a battlefield. The Valorans had never faced anything like this before. Most species they encountered either surrendered immediately or fought in organized military formations. These humans fought like wild animals, using every trick and advantage they could find. They hid in air vents, set traps, and attacked from unexpected directions. On the Valoran command ship, Admiral Krikstal watched the reports with growing confusion. The boarding operation should have been finished in minutes. Instead, his elite troops were being held off by a handful of primitives with basic weapons. "What is taking so long?" he demanded. "The humans refuse to surrender," reported his aide. "They continue fighting even when defeat is certain. Our troops report that the humans seem to prefer death over capture. This was not normal behavior by galactic standards. Most species valued survival over honor. They would submit to superior force rather than face destruction. These humans seemed to follow different rules." Back on the Liberty, Captain Jake made a hard decision. The aliens were slowly winning despite his crew's efforts. Soon they would control the ship. But he could still send a message to Earth. "Danny, can you get a signal through to home?" Jake asked. "I think so, but only for a few seconds before they jam it," Danny replied. "Do it. Send everything we've recorded about these aliens. Earth needs to know we're not alone out here." Danny's fingers flew over his controls. For 30 seconds, a tight beam signal shot toward Earth carrying everything they had learned about the Velerans. Then the alien jamming cut them off. Soon after, the last human defenders were overwhelmed. Lisa and her team fought to the end, but the aliens had too many advantages. One by one, the humans were stunned and captured. Jake stood on his bridge as the aliens surrounded him. He looked Commander Zethka in the eye and spoke clearly. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of the United Nations ship Liberty. You have attacked a peaceful exploration vessel. This act will not be forgotten." Zethka studied the human captain with curiosity. Even in defeat, this primitive showed no fear. Most species begged for mercy at this point. This one still looked ready to fight. The Valorans had captured the human ship, but they were beginning to realize they had found something unexpected. These humans were not like other species in the galaxy. They fought differently, thought differently, and acted in ways that made no sense by civilized standards. As the prisoners were transferred to the Valoran ship, both sides knew this was just the beginning. The humans had lost their first battle with aliens, but they had also sent a warning to Earth. Soon, humanity would know they were not alone in the universe, and Earth would not be pleased about what had happened to the Liberty. The human prisoners sat in the Valoran holding cells aboard Admiral Krikstal's flagship. The walls were made of some kind of crystal that glowed with soft blue light. There were no bars or doors that the humans could see, just smooth surfaces that somehow kept them trapped inside. Captain Jake Morrison studied their prison carefully. The technology was far beyond anything humans had developed, but he noticed something strange. The aliens seemed to think in straight lines. Their ship designs, their weapons, even their jail cells followed predictable patterns. "Can anyone figure out how these walls work?" Jake whispered to his crew. Engineer Rick Hayes pressed his hands against the crystal surface. "It feels warm and it vibrates slightly. I think it's some kind of energy field made solid. But I can't find any controls or weak spots." In the ship's medical bay, alien doctors were examining the captured humans. They moved slowly and carefully, like they were studying rare animals. One of them, a tall female with silver markings on her face, seemed especially interested in human biology. Medical Officer Karen Wells watched as the alien doctor scanned her with a device that looked like a glowing wand. The alien seemed confused by what she found. She called over another doctor and they spoke in their musical language while pointing at Karen. Karen realized they were surprised by human anatomy. The aliens had expected something different. She wondered what other species they had met and how humans compared to them. Admiral Krikstal decided to question the prisoners personally. He had dealt with hundreds of primitive species before, but these humans bothered him. They had fought too hard and shown too much courage for such a backward people. The first prisoner brought before him was Communications Officer Danny Brooks. Danny was young and nervous, but he held his head up and looked the alien admiral in the eye. "What is your species called?" Krikstal asked through a translation device. "We are humans," Danny replied. "We come from a planet called Earth. How many worlds does your empire control?" Danny almost laughed. "Empire? We only have one world. Earth is all we have." This answer surprised Krikstal. Every space-traveling species he knew controlled at least a dozen worlds. How could a one-planet species build ships capable of deep space travel? "How many of your kind exist?" "About 8 billion on Earth," Danny said. The alien admiral's eyes widened. 8 billion individuals on one world was an enormous population. Most civilized species spread out across many planets to avoid overcrowding. These humans lived packed together like insects. The questions continued for hours. Crixtal learned that humans had only been traveling in space for a few decades. They had no knowledge of other intelligent species. They had built their ships and technology completely on their own. This was almost impossible to believe. Every other species in the galaxy had been contacted and guided by the Galactic Council. They shared technology and knowledge freely. These humans had developed everything from scratch. Linguist Amy Foster was brought in next. She was excited despite being a prisoner. This was the first chance any human had to speak with aliens. She had a million questions about their language, their culture, and their technology. "Your translation device is amazing," Amy said to Crixtal. "How does it work so fast? You've only been listening to us for a few hours, but it already understands our language perfectly." Crixtal was confused by her enthusiasm. The translator samples brain patterns and speech sounds. It is standard technology throughout the galaxy. "Do your people not have such devices?" "We've never seen anything like it," Amy admitted. "We're still trying to figure out how to talk to dolphins properly." The Admiral made notes about this. A species that couldn't even communicate with other life forms on their own planet had somehow built starships. It made no sense. When engineer Rick Hayes was questioned, he asked as many questions as he answered. He wanted to know how Valoran technology worked. His curiosity seemed to amuse the aliens. "Your ship's power source is very primitive," one of the Valoran engineers told Rick. "You burn chemical fuel to create thrust. Why do you not use gravitic manipulation?" "Because we don't know how," Rick said simply. "We use what we can build and understand. Our engines might be primitive, but they work." The Valoran engineer was fascinated. "Show me how your weapons function." Rick explained how human railguns worked. They used magnetic fields to accelerate metal projectiles at incredible speeds. The alien engineer looked confused. "But why use solid projectiles? Energy weapons are much more efficient." "Because a chunk of metal moving at high speed will punch through almost anything," Rick replied. "Energy can be deflected or absorbed. Metal hitting you at 10,000 meters per second can't be stopped." This conversation was reported to Admiral Crixtal. The humans weren't just primitive. They were primitive in strange ways. Their technology focused on brute force rather than elegance. They built things to destroy rather than to impress. Security Chief Lisa Parker was the most difficult prisoner to question. She answered only with her name, rank, and ship assignment. When pressed for more information, she just stared at the aliens with cold eyes. "Your resistance is pointless," Crixtal told her. "Your species will join the Galactic Council like all others. You will be given better technology and taught proper civilization." "We didn't ask for your help," Lisa replied. "And we don't want your technology if it comes with chains." This attitude baffled the aliens. Every other species was grateful to join galactic civilization. They saw it as an honor to be uplifted from their primitive state. These humans seemed to prefer their independence over advancement. Medical Officer Karen Wells was questioned about human biology. The alien doctors had discovered that humans were much more robust than other species. They healed faster, could survive in harsh conditions, and seemed designed for conflict. "Your species appears to be adapted for warfare," the chief medical officer told Karen. "Your bone density, muscle mass, and reflexes are all optimized for combat." "What kind of world created such beings?" Karen thought about Earth's history. "Our planet is dangerous. We had to fight to survive. Weather, predators, diseases, and each other. Everything on Earth wants to kill everything else." The alien doctor was horrified. "How terrible. No wonder your people are so aggressive. You come from a death world. We call it home," Karen said proudly. Pilot Tony Clark was asked about human space travel. He explained how they used chemical rockets and nuclear engines to leave Earth's atmosphere. The aliens were amazed that humans could reach space at all with such crude technology. "The energy requirements must be enormous," the Valoran pilot said. "How do you generate enough power?" "We blow things up," Tony replied. "Controlled explosions in a tube pointed away from where we want to go." "Simple physics." The alien pilot looked disturbed. Every other species used clean, efficient gravitic drives. These humans literally rode explosions into space. It was like watching cave dwellers build rockets. As the questioning continued, Admiral Crixtal began to understand the problem. Humans weren't just another primitive species. They were primitives who had developed along a completely different path. Where other species learned cooperation and efficiency, humans had learned conflict and stubbornness. Their technology was crude but effective. Their society was chaotic but productive. Their military tactics were brutal but successful. They were like nothing else in the galaxy. The Admiral sent a report to the Galactic Council. He recommended extreme caution in dealing with humans. These beings could not be easily controlled or predicted. They thought in ways that made no sense to civilized minds. Meanwhile, the human prisoners were planning. They had learned much about their captors during the questioning. The aliens were advanced but overconfident. They expected other species to behave in predictable ways. Captain Jake Morrison gathered his crew's observations. The Valorans were powerful, but they had weaknesses. They relied too much on their technology. They couldn't imagine anyone refusing their offer of civilization. Most importantly, they had no idea what humans were really capable of when cornered. Danny Brooks had managed to hide a small communication device during the capture. It was damaged but might still work for one short transmission. If they could get word to Earth about what they had learned, humanity might have a chance to prepare. The humans were beginning to understand that this wasn't just first contact. This was the beginning of a conflict that would determine whether humanity remained free or became another servant species in the Galactic Empire. Both sides were learning about each other, but they were learning very different lessons. The aliens saw humans as dangerous primitives who needed to be controlled. The humans saw aliens as arrogant bullies who needed to be taught a lesson about messing with Earth. Neither side realized just how wrong their assumptions were or how much trouble was heading their way. The Galactic Council chamber was a massive dome that floated in space between several star systems. Representatives from 1,000 different species gathered here to make decisions that affected the entire galaxy. Today they were discussing the human problem. Species Representative Kumar the Wise called the emergency session to order. His people, the Arcani, had been part of the council for over 10,000 years. They had seen hundreds of primitive species join galactic civilization. This should have been a routine matter. "We have received Admiral Crixtal's report about the humans," Kumar announced to the assembly. "They appear to be a young species with unusual development patterns. The Admiral recommends caution, but I believe this is unnecessary." A representative from the Thexan Empire stood up. Her species looked like walking crystals that rang like bells when they moved. "These humans sound no different from the Karathi when we first found them. Aggressive primitives who needed guidance. Within 50 years, the Karathi became valuable council members." Another representative disagreed. The Vorthan ambassador resembled a giant spider made of liquid metal. His voice buzzed like angry insects. "The report mentions that humans prefer death to surrender. This is not normal behavior. Most species value survival above all else." "Exactly my point," said the Thexan representative. "They are clearly suffering from isolation madness. Once they see the benefits of galactic civilization, they will adapt quickly." Admiral Crixtal was present to answer questions. He stood before the council feeling uncomfortable. Most of these beings had never seen real combat. They solved problems through negotiation and technology sharing. They didn't understand what he had witnessed. "Honored representatives," Crixtal said, "these humans are unlike any species we have encountered. Their entire development seems focused on warfare and survival. They have no concept of civilized behavior." Representative Kumar waved a dismissive tentacle. "Admiral, you are a military officer. You see threats everywhere. These humans simply need proper education and guidance. We will send them gifts of technology and offer them junior membership in the council." "With respect, Honored One, I do not believe that will work," Crixtal replied. "The humans showed no interest in our offers. They seem to view our strength as a challenge rather than protection." The council members discussed this among themselves. Most agreed with Kumar. In their experience, primitive species always accepted galactic guidance once they understood the benefits. The humans would be no different. On Earth, the situation was very different. Admiral Grace Kelly stood in the command center of the United Nations Space Command. She had received Danny Brooks' distress signal 6 months ago. Since then, Earth's entire space program had shifted to military production. Defense Secretary Matt Johnson entered the command center carrying urgent reports. "Admiral, our deep space monitors have detected alien ships gathering at the edge of the solar system. It looks like they're preparing for something big." Admiral Kelly studied the tactical displays. Earth had 12 military spacecraft, all built in the last 6 months using every resource humanity could spare. They were small compared to what the aliens could deploy, but they were designed by people who understood warfare. Any word from the Liberty? Kelly asked. Nothing since the initial distress call, Johnson replied. We have to assume Captain Morrison and his crew are either dead or captured. General Pete Adams joined the conversation. He was in charge of Earth's ground defenses and space marine units. Admiral, our intelligence suggests the aliens don't understand human military doctrine. They're used to fighting species that follow galactic rules of engagement. What do you mean? Kelly asked. They expect formal battles with predictable tactics, Adams explained. Every species they've conquered fought the same way. Big fleets meeting in open space, energy weapons, defensive formations. They've never faced an enemy that uses kinetic weapons, stealth tactics, or asymmetric warfare. Admiral Kelly nodded. Humanity's space fleet was designed around different principles than alien technology. Human ships were smaller, faster, and built to deliver devastating kinetic strikes rather than engage in prolonged energy weapon duels. How long before we're ready? Kelly asked. The rescue fleet can launch in 48 hours, Adams replied. Commander Helen Ross will lead the mission aboard the UNS Defiance. We're sending everything we have. The rescue fleet was humanity's best attempt at military spacecraft. Each ship carried railgun batteries that could fire metal projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. They also carried nuclear missiles, boarding pods, and electronic warfare systems. Commander Helen Ross reviewed the mission plans aboard the Defiance. Her ship was the newest and most powerful vessel in the human fleet. It looked crude compared to alien technology, but it was built for war rather than exploration. Navigation specialist Brad Carter plotted their course to the last known position of the Liberty. Commander, we'll be severely outnumbered. Intelligence estimates the aliens have at least 50 ships in that area. Then we'll have to be smarter than them, Ross replied. We're not going there to fight fair. We're going to get our people back and show these aliens that humans don't back down. Meanwhile, the Valoran Empire was preparing its own response. Battle Commander Vexthor had been assigned to deal with the human situation permanently. He commanded a fleet of 30 heavy cruisers and support vessels. Vexthor was known throughout the Empire for his quick victories over primitive species. He used overwhelming displays of force to convince enemies to surrender without fighting. His fleet was designed to intimidate rather than destroy. This will be simple, Vexthor told his officers. We arrive in human space with superior numbers and technology. They surrender their planet and submit to council authority. If they refuse, we demonstrate our power by destroying one of their cities. They will see reason quickly. His strategy had worked on dozens of other worlds. Show overwhelming force, make demands, and accept surrender. Most species preferred survival to pointless resistance. The Valoran battle fleet began moving toward Earth's solar system. They expected to find a frightened planet ready to negotiate. Instead, they would find something the galaxy had never seen before. A species that viewed overwhelming odds as a challenge rather than a reason to surrender. Back on Earth, the final preparations were complete. The rescue fleet launched under Admiral Kelly's command, with Commander Ross leading the tactical operations. Earth's remaining defenses were placed on high alert. President Nathan Ford addressed the United Nations General Assembly. Fellow humans, we face the greatest challenge in our history. An alien empire has captured our people and threatens our freedom. But we are not the same species that once cowered in caves. We have faced extinction before and survived. We will face it again. The human fleet moved through space using careful stealth tactics. Their ships ran silent, using minimal power and avoiding easy detection. This was completely different from how other species approached space combat. Weapons Officer Cindy Torres checked the railgun systems aboard the Defiance. Each gun could fire a solid metal projectile at 20% of light speed. At that velocity, even a small piece of metal carried enough kinetic energy to destroy a building. All weapon systems green, Torres reported. We have full loads of kinetic penetrators and nuclear missiles. Electronic warfare systems are ready to jam alien communications. The human fleet reached the rendezvous point and immediately detected the alien formation. It was exactly as intelligence had predicted. A massive display of ships arranged in perfect formation, broadcasting their presence like a challenge. They're not even trying to hide, observed pilot Tony Martinez. Look at all those lights and energy signatures. They want everyone to know they're here. Commander Ross studied the tactical display. The alien ships were powerful but predictably positioned. They formed neat lines and geometric patterns that looked impressive but created obvious weak points. Begin electronic warfare operations, Ross ordered. "I want their communications jammed and their sensors confused. Then prepare for kinetic strikes on their command vessels." The battle was about to begin, but neither side really understood what they were facing. The aliens expected humans to negotiate or surrender when faced with superior numbers. The humans expected to fight a conventional space battle against an overconfident enemy. Both sides were wrong. This would not be a normal first contact situation or a standard military engagement. This would be the moment when two completely different ways of thinking about warfare met in the darkness between stars. The Valoran fleet maintained their perfect formation, waiting for the primitive humans to approach and submit to their authority. They had no idea that human ships were already positioning themselves for devastating surprise attacks. The human fleet moved like predators stalking prey, using every stealth technique and tactical advantage they could find. They had no intention of negotiating or surrendering. They were here to rescue their people and teach the aliens a lesson about underestimating humanity. In the prison cells aboard the Valoran flagship, Captain Jake Morrison and his crew felt the ship's engines. Change pitch. Something was happening. The rescue fleet had arrived, and both sides were about to learn what happened when an unstoppable force met an immovable object. The galaxy was about to dis. The battle began without warning. Commander Helen Ross gave the signal, and 12 human warships opened fire simultaneously. The Valoran fleet was still arranged in their perfect ceremonial formation when the first railgun round struck their shields. Battle Commander Vexthor felt his flagship shake as something hit it hard. The impact was unlike anything he had experienced before. Energy weapons created heat and light when they struck shields. This felt like being hit with a massive hammer. "Report," Vexthor demanded from his bridge crew. "Unknown weapon impact on forward shields," his tactical officer replied. The projectile was solid matter moving at extreme velocity. "Our shields absorbed the impact, but power levels dropped significantly." Vexthor was confused. Solid projectiles were primitive weapons used by species that hadn't developed proper energy systems. But no primitive weapon should have been able to affect Valoran shields at all. Aboard the UNS Defiance, weapons officer Cindy Torres watched her targeting display with satisfaction. Direct hit on their command ship. Their shields absorbed it, but look at those power readings. They're down to 80% already. Commander Ross nodded. "Continue firing. Target their largest vessels first. I want to see how many hits those shields can take." The human ships spread out and began systematic attacks on the Valoran formation. Each railgun shot was carefully aimed at critical systems. The metal projectiles struck with incredible force, draining alien shield generators with every impact. The Valorans returned fire with their energy weapons, but the human ships were no longer where their sensors indicated. Electronic warfare specialist Beth Turner was jamming alien targeting systems while the human fleet used three-dimensional maneuvering that the aliens couldn't predict. "Their energy weapons are impressive," observed Tactical Officer Ray Phillips, "but they're designed to fight enemies that stay in formation. They can't hit targets that move unpredictably." The alien fleet tried to adjust their tactics, but they were trained for formal space battles between civilized species. Human ships moved like fighters rather than warships, diving and weaving through space in patterns that made no tactical sense. By Galactic Standards Engineering Chief Vicky Adams monitored the Defiance's power systems as commander. Ross pushed the ship beyond its design limits. "Commander, we're running engines at 120%. The safety systems are screaming at me." "Override them," Ross replied. "We're not built for safety. We're built for war." This was the fundamental difference between human and alien technology. Alien ships were designed for long-term operation, efficiency, and crew comfort. Human ships were designed to deliver maximum damage in minimum time, regardless of the cost. The first Valoran ship died 12 minutes into the battle. The heavy cruiser Centalar had taken 17 railgun hits before its shields finally collapsed. The 18th shot punched through the hull and struck the ship's power core. The explosion was visible across the entire battle zone. Vexthor watched in horror as one of his most powerful vessels simply came apart. The humans had destroyed a ship that should have been invulnerable to primitive weapons. "How is this possible?" he demanded from his science officer. "Their projectiles carry enormous kinetic energy," the officer replied. "Our shields are designed to deflect energy beams, not absorb physical impacts. Each hit is like being struck by a small asteroid." Vexthor finally understood the problem. Human weapons violated every principle of civilized warfare. Instead of elegant energy systems, they used brute force. Instead of precise targeting, they relied on overwhelming impact. They fought like barbarians with advanced technology. The human fleet pressed their attack. Commander Ross had divided her ships into 3 groups that struck the alien formation from different angles. The Velerans couldn't defend against attacks coming from above, below, and from the side simultaneously. Demolitions expert Roy Green, aboard the UNS Warrior, had a special mission. While the other ships attacked with railguns, he was preparing nuclear missiles for close-range deployment. Human nuclear weapons were crude by alien standards, but they carried enough explosive force to crack planets. Target acquired, Green reported. The alien flagship has taken enough damage to weaken its shields. Requesting permission to deploy nuclear strike. Permission granted, Ross replied. Show them what humans do to bullies. The nuclear missile launched from the Warrior and accelerated toward the Valoran flagship. It was not a sophisticated weapon, just a large explosive device with basic guidance systems. But it carried the equivalent of a small star's energy in its warhead. Vexthor saw the missile approaching and ordered defensive fire. Energy beams lanced out to intercept it, but the missile's crude construction actually helped it survive. Where sophisticated alien technology would have been destroyed by the energy weapons, the simple human device just absorbed the damage and kept coming. The nuclear explosion lit up space like a miniature sun. The Valoran flagship's shields collapsed completely, and the ship itself was thrown backward by the blast. Hull plates buckled and internal systems failed across the massive vessel. Impossible, Vexthor whispered as damage reports flooded his bridge. No primitive species should possess such destructive weapons. But the humans were just getting started. Navigation specialist Brad Carter had been studying alien ship movements and noticed a pattern. The Valorans moved in predictable formations that left their larger vessels vulnerable to flanking attacks. Commander, I've identified their command and control weaknesses, Carter reported. If we take out their communication ships, their whole fleet will lose coordination. Do it, Ross ordered. The human ships changed targets, focusing their fire on the smaller vessels that coordinated the alien fleet. These ships had lighter armor and shields, making them easier targets for railgun attacks. One by one, the Valoran communication ships were destroyed. Without proper coordination, the alien fleet began to break apart. Ships collided with each other as their formation discipline collapsed. Panic spread through their ranks as commanders lost contact with their superiors. Engineering Chief Vicky Adams had been modifying the Defiance's systems throughout the battle. She rerouted power from life support, artificial gravity, and other non-essential systems to boost weapon output. Commander, I can give you one shot at double power, but it will overload our main railgun, Adams reported. Target their largest remaining ship, Ross replied. Let's end this. The overcharged railgun fired a projectile that glowed white-hot from the electromagnetic acceleration. The metal slug struck the Valoran dreadnought with enough force to punch completely through the massive vessel from bow to stern. The dreadnought broke in half, its structural integrity destroyed by the kinetic impact. Thousands of alien crew members died instantly as their ship came apart around them. Battle Commander Vexthor watched his fleet being systematically destroyed by ships that should have been inferior in every way. The humans fought with tactics that made no sense and weapons that violated all principles of civilized warfare. We must retreat, his second-in-command urged. We cannot defeat these monsters with conventional tactics. Vexthor wanted to disagree, but the evidence was overwhelming. Half his fleet was destroyed or disabled. The humans showed no sign of slowing their attacks. Worse, they seemed to be enjoying the violence. All ships withdraw to minimum safe distance, Vexthor ordered. Prepare emergency transmission to Galactic Council headquarters. But Commander Ross was not finished. As the alien ships tried to retreat, she ordered her fleet to pursue. Human ships were smaller and faster than Valoran vessels, making them perfect for hit-and-run attacks on fleeing enemies. Don't let them escape cleanly, Ross commanded. I want them to remember this lesson. The human ships harassed the retreating Valorans for hours, picking off damaged vessels and preventing any organized withdrawal. By the time the aliens finally escaped to hyperspace, only half their original fleet remained operational. Aboard the Valoran flagship, Vexthor composed his report to the Galactic Council. His hand shook as he described the battle. How could he explain that a primitive species had defeated the Empire's best battle fleet? The humans fight like demons, he dictated to his recorder. They show no fear of death and no respect for civilized warfare. Their weapons are crude but devastating. Their tactics are chaotic but effective. We must warn the Council that these beings are not like other species we have encountered. The surviving human prisoners aboard the Felleran ships felt the battle through the hull, vibrations, and knew their people had come for them. Captain Jake Morrison smiled as he felt the ship shaking under alien weapons fire. Sounds like the cavalry has arrived, he told his crew. Security Chief Lisa Parker nodded grimly. I hope they brought enough firepower. These aliens are in for a very unpleasant surprise. If they think humans fight like everyone else in their precious galaxy. Communications. Officer Danny Brooks managed to activate his hidden transmitter during the confusion of battle. He sent a brief message to the human fleet. Prisoners alive. Location transmitted. Give them hell. The rescue operation that followed was the emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike any in recorded history. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered to hear Battle Commander Vexthor's report about the human encounter. The massive chamber buzzed with nervous energy as species that had lived in peace for millennia faced the possibility of real war. Representative Kumar the Wise no longer looked confident as he called the session to order. His tentacles trembled slightly as he read the preliminary reports. Battle Commander Vexthor, please present your full account of the engagement with the human fleet. Vexthor stood before the assembled representatives, his uniform still bearing scorch marks from the battle. Honored Council, I must report a total failure of our standard first contact protocols. The humans did not respond to our show of force as expected. Explain the casualties, demanded the Thexan representative, her crystal body ringing with agitation. 15 ships destroyed, 12 more severely damaged, Vexthor replied. Over 8,000 personnel killed or wounded. The human fleet suffered minimal losses. A shocked silence filled the chamber. The Galactic Council had not suffered military losses like this in over 1,000 years. Most member species could not even remember what real warfare looked like. Council military advisor Thengsul studied the tactical data with growing alarm. His species, the Xanthari, were among the few who still maintained actual military forces rather than ceremonial fleets. These human weapons, Thengsul said, they violate every principle of civilized warfare. Kinetic projectiles, nuclear explosives, electronic warfare systems designed to cause confusion rather than disable. They fight to destroy rather than subdue. The Vorthan ambassador's metallic voice buzzed with concern. How is this possible? Every species we have encountered follows the same basic patterns of development. Energy weapons, defensive shields, formal battle tactics. These humans seem to have developed along completely different lines. Admiral Krikstal provided additional details from his interrogation of human prisoners. The humans come from what they call a deathworld. Their entire planet is hostile to life. Every species on their world competes violently for survival. They have been shaped by millions of years of constant warfare. This explains their biological adaptations, added the chief xenobiologist. Enhanced bone density, superior reflexes, increased aggression. They are literally evolved for combat in ways we have never encountered. Representative Kumar tried to maintain order as panic spread through the assembly. Surely we can reach some accommodation with these humans. Every species can be reasoned with once they understand the benefits of galactic civilization. I do not believe that is possible, Vexthor replied. The humans showed no interest in our technology or our offers of advancement. They seem to value their independence above everything else. When faced with superior numbers, they attacked rather than negotiated. On Earth, the situation was equally tense, but for different reasons. Admiral Grace Kelly stood in the United Nations Security Council chamber, briefing world leaders about humanity's first contact with alien civilization. President Nathan Ford listened grimly as Kelly described the Valoran Empire and the Galactic Council. So we're dealing with an empire that controls thousands of worlds and expects us to simply submit to their authority? That appears to be their standard operating procedure, Kelly confirmed. Every other species they've encountered has joined their system willingly in exchange for advanced technology and protection. And if we refuse? Asked the Chinese representative. Based on their behavior so far, they will likely attempt to force compliance through military action, Kelly replied. However, our recent engagement suggests they are not prepared for the kind of resistance we can offer. Secretary of Defense Matt Johnson presented the strategic analysis. Our intelligence indicates that the Galactic Council has become complacent. They've had peace for so long that they've forgotten how to fight real wars. Their military is designed for intimidation rather than combat. General Pete Adams added his assessment. The alien ships we captured are technologically superior but tactically predictable. They rely heavily on energy shields and weapons that are effective against other energy-based systems. Our kinetic weapons seem to be outside their experience. President Ford made the decision that would define humanity's future. We will not submit to alien rule under any circumstances. If they want Earth, they'll have to take it from us. Admiral Kelly, I want our entire industrial capacity converted to military production. We're going to build a fleet that can defend our solar system. The months that followed saw the greatest mobilization in human history. Every spacefaring nation contributed resources to the defense effort. Shipyards worked around the clock to produce warships designed specifically to fight alien technology. Commander Helen Ross was promoted to admiral and placed in charge of fleet operations. Her victory against the Valoran fleet had made her a hero throughout human space. She oversaw the construction of larger, more powerful ships based on lessons learned from the first battle. The aliens have one critical weakness, Ross explained to her staff. They think in terms of galactic civilization. They expect enemies to follow the same rules they do. We don't have to follow anyone's rules but our own. The new human warships incorporated every advantage they could develop. Stealth systems to avoid detection, electronic warfare capabilities to disrupt alien communications, and increasingly powerful kinetic weapons that could punch through any known shielding system. Engineer Rick Hayes, now back on Earth after his rescue, led the development of new weapon systems. We've learned that alien shields are designed to deflect energy, not absorb kinetic impacts. Our new railguns can fire projectiles at 30% of light speed. Nothing in their fleet can survive a direct hit. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council was struggling to formulate a response to the human threat. Traditional diplomatic approaches had failed completely. The humans refused all offers of technology exchange or junior membership in the Council. Diplomat Yenthra the Peaceful was assigned to attempt one final negotiation. Her species, the Milani, were renowned throughout the galaxy for their ability to resolve conflicts without violence. She traveled to the edge of human space under a flag of truce. Admiral Kelly met with Yenthra aboard a neutral space station hastily constructed for the negotiations. The alien diplomat was tall and graceful, with silver skin that seemed to glow with inner light. She spoke in a voice like flowing water. Admiral Kelly, I come seeking understanding between our peoples, Yenthra said. Surely we can find common ground that benefits both humanity and the galactic community. That depends on what you're offering, Kelly replied. If you're here to demand our surrender, this conversation is over. Not surrender, Yenthra said carefully. Partnership. The Council offers humanity advanced technology, access to galactic trade networks, and protection from hostile species. In return, we ask only that you follow basic civilized protocols and contribute to galactic security. Kelly studied the alien diplomat with cold eyes. And who decides what these civilized protocols are? Who determines what humanity must contribute? Your Galactic Council? The Council represents the collective wisdom of 1,000 species, Yenthra replied. We have maintained peace and prosperity for millennia. Surely this is preferable to the chaos and violence of independent development. Maybe for some species, Kelly said, but humans didn't crawl out of caves and conquer a death world just to hand over our freedom to aliens who think they know better than we do. The negotiations continued for days, but the fundamental problem remained unsolvable. The Galactic Council could not conceive of a species that preferred dangerous independence to safe servitude. Humanity could not accept any arrangement that placed alien authority above human sovereignty. As the talks broke down, both sides prepared for the inevitable conflict. The Council began mobilizing military forces from across their territory. Ancient warships were recommissioned and new fleets assembled under the command of their most experienced military leaders. The humans, meanwhile, completed their defensive preparations. The Solar Defense Fleet now numbered over 100 warships, supported by orbital fortresses, minefields, and automated defense platforms. Earth's moon had been converted into a massive military base bristling with railgun batteries. Captain Jake Morrison, recovered from his captivity, now commanded one of the new Dreadnought-class vessels. The UNS Vengeance was twice the size of the old Liberty and carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. They still don't understand what they're dealing with, Morrison told his crew as they patrolled the outer solar system. They think this is about technology or military strength. They don't realize this is about survival. Security Chief Lisa Parker, now serving as the ship's tactical officer, nodded grimly. Every human alive knows that if we lose this war, our species loses its freedom forever. That's not something we can compromise on. The final confrontation was inevitable. Long-range sensors detected massive alien fleets gathering at the edge of human space. The Galactic Council had assembled the largest military force in their history, over 1,000 ships representing dozens of species.